So we start off with our two equations, sine and cosine. A is equal to the amplitude. Period is 2 pi over b. That's where you will find that. C is the vertical translation, where if it is greater than 0, the function is translated up c units, and if it is less than 0, it's translated down c units. And D is the horizontal translation, where if it's greater than 0, then the function is translated right d units, and if it's less than 0, it's translated left d units.
So here we have our sample equation. Below you'll see the amplitude, which in this case is equal to 2. The amplitude is the distance above and below the midline. Our period we set equal to 2 pi over 2, in which case our b value is also equal to 2. So we divide both sides by 2, and that gives us our period, which is pi. The horizontal shift will go left pi over 4, because that is the value of d. Our vertical shift will go down 2 units, because that is the value of c. So we've drawn a graph below to demonstrate the equation that we're about to form. So we're going to start with our period, in which it is equal to pi. So one full cycle of the function will get done in pi radians, because that is the distance. However, as you can see, the horizontal shift is left pi over 4. And the reason it's left is because there's a plus sign in front of pi over 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the negative pi over 4 on the y-axis and make this our new midline. So now we have to go out pi radian. So on this interval, we will have one complete cycle of the sine function. Now we're going to divide this graph into 4 equal parts. So usually, the center of the graph is on the x-axis, otherwise known as the midline. But however, what you see here is the vertical shift down 2 units. And so we're going to make our new midline at -2. So now that we've graphed the period, the horizontal shift, and the vertical shift, we're going to adjust our graph to fit the amplitude. As you can see, we've extended it down one more point to make it to -4.
So now you have to include the amplitude, and the amplitude is the distance from the midline up to the max and the minimum. The midline is at -2, and since the amplitude is 2, we're going to be moving up 2 units, and that will be our maximum value that the function will reach. And now we have to move down 2 units. That would make it to -4, and that's going to be the minimum value that our function will reach. Okay, so now we're going to start graphing our function. As you can see, this is a sine function, and sine, you'll have to remember, always starts at the midline. So wherever the midline is, in this instance it's -2, we're starting it at 0, -2. This is just going to be a skeleton function because we still do have to move it to left pi over 4.
So now we're going to begin to graph the function. Since our amplitude is equal to 2, this is going to show how much the minimum and maximum points will move above and below the midline. So we start here at -2. So our first point is going to move 2 points above -2, which will be set at equal to 0. So that will move here. Our second point will then go 2 points below this, which puts it back at -2. And this moves over 1 on the x-axis to 2 pi. Now we must continue to carry our function downward, in which we will move this point to -4, which is down 2 more units. This puts the function at 3 pi over 4. Finally, we are going to move our function up 2 more, which will put it at -2. So now that we have all of our points set up, we're going to connect them. And since this is the skeleton function, we're going to represent it with a dashed line. So now we cannot forget about the horizontal shift. So what we have to do is shift every single point over by -pi over 4. So this one, this one, this one, and this one. So as you can see by the full line, we have shifted everything left over by 4 over pi. So now our final function will curve like this. Now the graph will not remain the same when we change our function from sine to cosine.
So we have adjusted our new graph to fit the function cosine.
So although our midline has remained the same throughout both functions, now since our graph is going to be based on this cosine function instead of the sine function, the starting point will change a little bit. So in a sine function, it begins at the midline. But now, since we have a cosine function, it will either start at the maximum or the minimum. Since here we have a positive function, our graph is going to begin at the maximum, which is 2 above negative 2. This puts the beginning at 0. So now that we have our starting point, we are going to plot the rest of the points based on the other principles in our graph. Now that we've graphed all of our points, we have to connect them. And we cannot forget that the period has stayed the same consistently throughout, even though the cosine and the sine have altered. So this is our new function graph. But we cannot forget that we have a horizontal shift, left of pi over 4. So what we have to do is we have to move every single point over to the left by pi over 4. That means this one, this one, this one, and this one. So now our final cosine equation is shown by the thickened line, in which we've applied the amplitude, the period, the horizontal shift, and the vertical shift all in one.
Thanks for watching!
Yes!